Hi, my name is Kirsten Hodgson. I am a textile artist based living in Newbridge. I wasn't sure who to collaborate with. I had an idea of maybe working with my sister, she's an artist as well. Also my partner, he's a sculptor. But then it was suggested to me to work with Annie Morris, who is a fine wordsmith, brilliant poet. And it's worked really, really well, just the way we've bounced, our words have bounced with each other, or her words I've read into her words. Yeah, it's been great.
My name's Annie Morris. I was a journalist for a few years, and then I published a book a few years ago that sold very well in Germany. Nowhere else, but it sold very well in Germany. So if you want parenting advice in German, you come to me. No, I was paired with Kirsten, which was just great because we didn't really know each other very well at all. And it was just wonderful to have this regular Friday date with Kirsten on the phone to discuss what we'd done, which was usually not much. But then all of a sudden you'd have a really productive chat and you'd spend an hour discussing what you'd done that week. And I think the pairing up of artists together has been the most brilliant thing about this, because it's been the one regular thing in an elastic period of time where dates and numbers all merge into one. But that one date, that Friday afternoon with Kirsten, was fantastic. It was an anchor in the week.
I think when we started, we came up with a list of words, just sort of buzzwords to help bounce ideas, and I ran them through with Annie, and she was very, very interested in a room of one's own, because she obviously then had all of her family in her house, which very rarely happens at this time. And she said the kitchen's always her safe space, and the kitchen wasn't even hers, so she'd lost that sort of sense of having her own space again, which was really interesting to start working with.
Well, food, because you see, all of a sudden I'm feeding 7 people every night through this COVID thing, and wanting to avoid the shops. So you become obsessed with food. What you're going to cook out of stuff you've got in the cupboards was the first thing. And then where do I hide my things? Because, if I buy anything nice, it gets eaten, because you forget what it's like. It's like an episode of Big Brother. When they're little, you're the parent, but when they're all adults, young adults, it's like you're cohabiting with all of these people who all want to eat your chocolate. So again, another one of the pieces we worked on was about me just hiding my Kit Kats behind the bleach, because it's the one place that nobody in the family goes to, is the cleaning cupboard. So I quickly worked out at the beginning of lockdown, if you put everything behind the bleach in the cleaning cupboard, nobody knows it's there. And that was my little gift to myself.
Most important thing for me is a pair of fabric scissors, which only ever cut fabric. They don't cut anything but fabric. And if anything but fabric is cut with them, then whoever used them is in big trouble. Other things are these really, really important embroidery hoops for keeping your fabric tight when you're sewing either on the machine or by hand. So these are a lifesaver, and these are life.
I use my phone mainly to write, and it's very handy because you can do that in bed or when you're waiting for a train or something like that.
I tend to work well in a studio environment where I've got people next to me, more than one person even, just bouncing ideas. So the fact that we did it over the phone, initially we were just phone calls, emails and phone calls once a week, just to talk about where we were, taking photographs and emailing. It was strange, it was very, very strange, yeah, odd, but interesting.
I found the collaboration process to be fantastic, because I would write something and Kirsten would come up with this idea that was just absolutely perfect to illustrate it. So in this jumble of words I'd give her, she'd pluck out one word and say, oh, that would be good. And then she'd go and make something. For example, I did this, desperate for something to cook and wanting to avoid the shops like everybody. I just hacked away at whatever was in the bottom of the fridge and the freezer and made this mysterious stew that I called a savoury stew. And everyone ate it and said, what was in it? And I said, oh, it's a mystery. And she illustrated that with a prawn. There were 3 sad prawns in this stew. Nobody knew, but she illustrated it with 1 prawn, which sums up the whole thing.
I don't believe that the work I've created for this is that much different. I've done a bit more hand embroidery in this one than I have in my last few pieces. And even just collaborating, that would be very different for me, because I do tend to work on my own a lot.
I do love a bit of Twitter, and so what I found quite interesting was a lot of stuff that I write on Twitter sort of came into a lot of this work as well. And if I wrote something for this project, I'd tweet it as well, and it'd be quite interesting to see what worked and what didn't work using that as a platform. So that's been quite fun. And also when you write something and people relate to it, that's kind of nice too.
The project for me, I think I did find therapeutic. I think sewing for me is, you know, some people like to read, some people like to run, some people like to keep fit. So that's sewing for me is good for my headspace. I find I do a lot of thinking when I'm sewing, so you can fix the world's problems in your head when you're sewing. So it has been good for me. Once I got going, it was good for me.
Very therapeutic to be able to work on something that was distracting, completely distracting, that didn't take a long time to think about. So I wasn't thinking about it from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, but somebody would say something or I'd see something during the day, and then I'd just scuttle away, hide myself away for a little bit and just come up with something to illustrate that. So it was a lovely distraction, because even though you were maybe driven to distraction sometimes by your family and living with them all, it was lovely to be able to have this as an excuse to say, I'm just going to do something and then just get it down.
For me, I very much liked my Kit Kat, which was the first piece that I finished. And it was the first poem that Annie had sent me as well. So I do really like my Kit Kat, and I really like my little houses that are over the words. They took a fair bit of working out how to make them work. So they're 3-dimensional, but on the wall and not as standing on a plinth. So I am really pleased with them, yeah.
I'm particularly fond of the, I've hidden the chocolate, because I think a lot of people who love chocolate and live with people who eat it can relate to the joy of having your own bar just ferreted away somewhere. So I'm particularly fond of that one because I absolutely love the illustration that goes with it. So I think as a pairing, that's great.
Annie and I were talking about whether or not this is the end of the project, and I think we both agree we've just pressed pause for a while. I'd like to collaborate with her again, definitely.
I think it would be great if this project did continue, because one thing is about the connections, the connectivity, bringing all the artists in the community together to work on this one thing has been very enjoyable, I must say. Meeting new people has been very enjoyable, and just being in this space and seeing everything and wanting to desperately look up close at everything, which is what I'm hoping to do later on. So yeah, I hope it does continue.
I think the most valuable piece of advice I've been given was by one of my tutors, Nigel Cheney in NCAD, and that was iron your fabric. And the other piece of advice is when you're cutting embroidery thread to sew, don't make it any bigger than the length of your elbow. And I've stuck with all the time.
The valuable piece of advice that I've been given is to write for yourself. So if you enjoy it and if it makes you smile, or if it means something to you, then write it down, because then you're writing from the heart.